Warning: this video may potentially trigger seizures for people with photosensitive epilepsy. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the haunted tales from the old rocking chair. And now your host, Christina Spencer.
House in the Woods, written by Daddy Warbucks. When I was growing up, my parents had a place on the edge of town. One side was the neighborhood, the other was hundreds of acres of woods. We used to go exploring in the woods back there to kill time and build forts, you know. Typical boy stuff like that. I was probably around 13 to 14 years old at the time. We never would go too far because we were scared if something bad happened, no one could get to us quickly. As well as the fact we never told our parents where we were or what we were up to. Plus, cell phones weren't extremely common back then. One day, we felt extra brave, so we decided to go even deeper into the woods. Now, where we lived at the time, the best way to describe it is these woods were super dense with a ton of underbrush, so you couldn't see out above or too far ahead of you. So it always seemed dark and very unnerving. This day it was also misty and drizzly, so it made it extra creepy to begin with. We traveled what I would describe as maybe half a mile to a mile. Now, I wasn't 100% familiar with the area, as we hadn't gone this far before, so I knew of no paths or entrances or roads leading into the woods. We picked a random spot and began cutting down smaller trees to build a fort. After a couple of hours and being a typical narrow-minded team, we decided to look around the immediate area for something interesting. We walked a couple hundred yards and found a barely visible path. Of course, when you find a path, you have to follow it, right? We followed the path through the dense cedar trees. It winded back and forth for seemingly like an eternity. Finally, we came to a clearing and found an old two-story farmhouse, as I would describe it. The treetops loomed over the roof of the house, making it seem much darker. Now, what do you think we did? Of course, we had to go inside. At this point, we were soaked from being out in the drizzly mist. I came to the door, which was already cracked open slightly. I opened it a bit more and peered inside. Nothing too spectacular by any means. A few pieces of rotting furniture, trash littered the dust-covered floor, parts of the floor were gone, and you can see the darkness below. The whole house had a bad lean to it, so I didn't dare go upstairs. It could have very easily fallen over. Upon further investigation, we found a few old, handmade, creepy-looking dolls. The white fabric was dirty and tattered they were made from. Their button eyes had long since fallen off. The whole place just had this super eerie vibe. It was getting late in the evening by this point, so I thought, we better get back. We left the house and started walking back on the path. About 30 feet out or so, I checked to see if there were any other paths or a road leading to said house. Didn't see anything, so I turned back at the house and I swear I saw something move away from the second-story window as the curtain was moving ever so slightly. I figured my eyes were playing tricks on me, so I didn't think much of it. We made it back home, and the next day I told one of my closest friends about the house and that I was going to take him there. So he comes over and we head that way. I made sure to tell him all the details about it during our trek there. We get to the path and are fixing to round the last bend before the house came into view. Upon coming to the clearing, I couldn't believe my eyes. The house was completely burned to the ground. Nothing was left except the concrete risers it was sitting on. No ashes, no still smoldering embers, nothing. The ground was still wet from the previous day's precipitation. My friend looked at me in disbelief as if I'd been pulling his leg the entire time. I told him, no, I swear it was here yesterday. I never saw any smoke that evening, which you could have easily seen from my parents' house. Being the young, curious individual I was, I had to figure out what happened. So I walked up to where the house was, and the only thing I found was one of those creepy, handmade dolls sitting in the middle of where the house stood. We never went back to those woods again. I still drive by those woods on a daily basis on my way to work. Part of me really wants to go back there and see what I'll find. This House Possessed, my personal true story. Written by Vicariah. I have always been quite adventurous, so it stands to reason that when I had spare time alone, I would hop in my car and go exploring. I especially liked finding old abandoned homes, and there are a lot of them in Colorado. My husband hated the fact that I would do this completely alone, and he was always afraid I would get into trouble. When I saw a no trespassing sign, it was an invitation, so it's no surprise that I would often be where I wasn't supposed to be. One day while out driving down old country roads that I happened upon an old abandoned farmhouse, so I pulled into the driveway. There was no garage or carport, so my car was right in plain sight. This old brick farmhouse was all boarded up, but around the side of the house there was an opening where one of the boards had fallen off, so I scrambled on up and crawled through. I found myself in a front bedroom. Of course, it was rather dark, but there were cracks in the boards that let in just enough light that you could easily maneuver throughout the house without too much difficulty. Imagine my surprise to find everything still in the house untouched. Near as I could tell, it had been empty since sometime in the 60s, so it's been sitting in this condition for at least 20 years. I found this very strange that no kids had gotten inside to party, nor any evidence of homeless person, especially since this house could be easily seen from I-25, a major highway that goes through the heart of Denver, and there was an exit within walking distance to the house. Denver had a very large homeless population, just like all big cities have. The living room had all the furniture, lamps, tables, and the bedroom had armoires and an iron bed. Everything left in the kitchen along with home canned goods, spices, dishes, everything still there. The bedroom where I entered was a portable toilet, and I wondered if someone had been sick. I got a feeling that was the case. I spent hours in there just looking through pictures and postcards of the family that lived there. There was a ton of Catholic paraphernalia, too. You know, crucifixes on the walls, rosary beads, and the like. It was fascinating to me, and I was trying to figure out why the family had left the house this way, and I was so surprised when I came out how many hours had passed, but I chalked it up to being too involved and losing track of time. I've never worn a watch, so it isn't hard to believe that this could happen. This place also wasn't too far from my house, so I would go there as often as I could and wander the grounds. Investigating the sheds and the outhouse, the root cellar under the house was loaded with old canned goods and rotted root vegetables. The smell, of course, after all that time was non-existent, so it really wasn't unpleasant. I kept wondering what had happened there. I did not know that the family that had owned this home lived just around the corner on the same street. How I found out was they caught me there and ran me off. I watched them as they left and saw where they went. Now when I go back, I'd look and see if they were home before I'd go in. So week after week, month after month, I would go back. There was so much to explore. Time after time, they would catch me there again and again and always run me off. I always wondered why they never called the police on me, but they never did. I think they knew I was being haunted, although I was not aware of it at the time. Later on, after I'd been exploring for a number of months, I began to find myself there with no recollection as to how or when I'd gotten there. But every time I went in, hours and hours would go by, and every time I came out, I was always surprised by how much time had passed. I would think I was in there for about 2 hours, but would find at least 6 hours had passed, and it was dusk. It would begin to get dark, and I would have to leave because, of course, there was no electricity. I was completely taken over and got into my mind that I wanted to buy this house. So I talked to my husband about it, never revealing to him that I'd been going there. I kept it a secret from everyone, even my best friend. I did some research and tried to find out everything I could about it. I did find out it was built in 1910, but could get no other information about it. I tried to talk to the people that owned the house, but they would never tell me anything at all and would just tell me to leave again. I never damaged anything, and I left everything as it was. I never took anything from that house until one day I was drawn to an old green woven clothes hamper in very good condition, and since I needed one at home, I took it. No one would miss it, right? Now I made a connection. Bad move. Soon after I took this hamper, I had a dream, or was it a dream? A figure in a dark hooded cloak approached me and said, "Can I come in to you and finish living out the rest of my life?" I replied, "If I do, then when can I live out the rest of my life?" And the figure disappeared and I woke up. Creepy, huh? I do believe that the hamper was the catalyst for the event. I should not have taken anything. Thou shalt not steal. There's always a reason for his commandments. The next time I went to the house, it had been completely demolished. The house and all of the outbuildings were gone. There was absolutely no trace that anything was ever there. Not a brick, not a board, not even a foundation. The root cellar had been filled in completely. I was devastated. I wondered how and why they did this. The house was safe and could have been sold. I had been going there 2 and 3 times a week, so I didn't know how this was accomplished so quickly. I wonder if the dream came after the destruction, but I had not known what they had done, and the hamper made it possible for the spirit to come to me. I kept the hamper for a number of years and was always haunted by whatever happened there. As long as I held on to it, I could not release myself from the spirit that inhabited the house, although I never had any more dreams. I finally did rid myself of it, though, because I knew as long as I hung on to it, I'd never be free. I do not remember how I disposed of it, but it wasn't until then that I was finally released, but this had gone on for years. I am very much more careful now when and where I go, and will stand outside and take the time to size up the spirit or spirits connected to these old places before entering. Please, if you're out exploring and you find a place like this, don't take anything, as you don't know what you're bringing home. And if you have taken anything from a house like this, get rid of it now. I hope you all enjoyed all of our haunted tales this evening. If you would like to discuss any of the stories on tonight's podcast, or just chat live with me, join our Discord server. I'm always live on there during and after the podcast every Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. Join our community on our Facebook group page and YouTube channel. If you have a haunting story of your own or artwork and you want to submit it for consideration for the future show, drop me a line on our Reddit page or email address. All our links are below in the description. Special thanks to Darken Mood, Darken_M00D, for all his wonderful art that you can check out on his Reddit page. I want to thank all our brave storytellers, for without them there would be no show. A detailed list of story credits are in the description. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the listener, for taking time out of your day to listen to Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. I hope you have a wonderful night, and as always, sweet dreams.